something called tuna sashimi. 3, 2, 1.
Right guys, I was going to turn you back again. This time I'm going to show you some of my Famicom hardware and show some of the differences between the Japanese Famicom. I'm not going to be showing you the NES because literally I haven't got one, so that would pretty much do that. But anyway, Nintendo released the original Famicom, which is the NES as we know it in this country, in 1983 in Japan. I think it was July 15th or something like that, 1983. It was an 8-bit console. It was to compete with Sega's, I think it was SG-1000 was around at the time. Cool console, cool looking console, I think. But yeah, guys, that's the original Famicom. Nice looking console. I think it looks like a bit of a Fisher-Price toy, to be honest. But the original Famicom looked like this. It didn't look like the NES box version that we had. Apparently the reason for that is that when they released the Famicom in the US, they didn't think the Americans would go for something that looked like a toy. So what they did is, as bigger is better, they put it in a big box, bumped up the size of it, and then released it in New York first, just a test buy, which it did very well. But anyway, back to the original Famicom. So that's what the original Famicom looks like. If you're wondering if I can hold it, this bit by here, if you push that, it pushes the actual cartridges off. It's got a nice little flap that does the cartridges. You got your on button by here, turn it on. You got your reset button. This at the front is a controller port. You can get various controllers, light gun, all that plugs in the front. As you can see, there's 2 controllers on the machine. One here, one by here. The controllers themselves are actually hardwired right into the back of the machine, and they've got a very short lead on them because I think most gamers in Japan at the time just sat on the floor in front of their TV and played games. So it's got very short leads, but it's got a pretty nice controller. As you can see, these ones have been refurbed because most of these you pick up these days, the joypad has been used for God knows how many years, and the actual diagonals are very, very difficult to do. But if you do looking around, you can actually get new rubbers for the inside, and that just refurbs these and makes them feel like brand new. 2 buttons. You had start and select, pretty much like the NES we have now these days. The difference is with the second controller, which I don't know why they cut it out here. Second controller doesn't have start or select. And you can turn, but it does have this little slider by here, and what this is actual microphone, which is here, so you can actually sing into your controller. And there was a couple of games in Japan that required you to do singing in the controller. There's my phone again. Yes, you sing into the controller. So pretty mad design. As you see, the actual joypads themselves, they sit in these little slots by here and they don't come off, which is quite a cool, nice feature. If you look on the back of mine, I've got this standard AV cable coming out the back of it, which is here. What it is, these weren't actually AV, so when they came out they were using your standard coaxial aerial lead, your RF lead or whatever you want to call it. But in Japan they've got a completely different TV system to us. So these are pretty much useless in Britain. You can't get them to work in the TV. So the only option is to actually have it AV converted, which is not hard to do. It's quite an easy mod to do. But the only problem is the picture quality is not the best. It's not great. But that's pretty much the best you're going to get out of one of these, other than getting an RGB converted, which can actually be done in this. And to be honest, one day I wouldn't mind actually getting this done, because I do like the original Famicom. I really like the look of the original Famicom. It's pretty cool. It's like a Fisher-Price toy, but very nice machine. I say what we do say the flap at the top. The cartridges for this machine, they came in different styles. You may have seen my pickups video. These are like copy cartridges. These are, you know, hacked cartridges. Original cartridges came in colors, different sizes. That's the Namco one. That's the pink. This is another sort of Hudson Soft pink one. They did, let's have a look, give you an idea. They also did some clear ones. This is Salamander. Comes with a really cool clear cartridge. Sometimes the cartridge is a slightly different shape. Is a blue cartridge. So collecting cartridges for the Famicom is pretty cool, because a lot of the cartridges are all different shapes and colours. And there's Mario Golf. This one's quite a heavy cartridge. It's actually got a battery backup in it, which still works, which is pretty cool. So you can actually play this, which is actually a pretty nice golf game. It was an updated version of the original Nintendo Golf. But this is actually quite a cool golf game, actually. I quite like it. So that's the green one. What also you could get in Japan, I've only got one of these. They're hard to get. It's a Famicom cassette, which is pretty much just... They call these cartridges cassettes in Japan. And it's pretty much, you know, like the old tapes and tape decks and stuff. You had a tape deck, you put a tape in for see. You can actually get ones that fit Famicom cartridges. And you can put them in there. So you get family computer cassette case, which is pretty cool. I quite like that, but they're very hard to get hold of these days, to be honest, and they do tend to be a little bit expensive if you do find them on eBay. But that's quite a nice feature. But like I said, some of the boxes the games came in. They came in little cardboard boxes like this. This is what's it called? The King of Medulla, which is a very difficult Sunsoft hard, you know, sort of platform game, as you can see. So some games come in this type of box. Some games came in this box. This is Greatest 2. Very nice condition this one is. It's got like a plastic cover. I think that's an aftermarket thing, mine, to be honest. But Greatest 2. Very nice version as well on the Famicom. Beast price for a console that came out in 1983. It can have to do a damn good version of Gradius. Like the other type is, you know, your standard cardboard box, like so. There were different size boxes and that which came out of it. I say the British boxes are this size, so as you can see a comparison between the two boxes. They were quite, you know, bigger. And then the actual cartridges themselves as well. That's a UK NES cartridge, and that's a Famicom cartridge. As you can see, they're a lot smaller, bit of a different shape. But actually, inside here, the circuit board literally only comes to about by here, and it's the same size circuit board that fits in one of them. So they pretty much added all that extra cartridge on it just to make it look bigger and badder, however they want to do it. But yeah, differences with these as well. You can't use one of these on a British machine, but you can if you need a converter. These are 72 pins, and I think these are a 60 pin slot. You can use these actually on the Famicom by getting yourself one of these converters. It's an NES to Famicom converter that plugs in there. Cartridge plugs on the top, and then you pretty much slot down there. Sorry. And it gets around the lockout chip, and then you go in there. But say the actual Japanese one didn't come over lockout chip, which is pretty cool. But I say that's the British cartridges. That's the Japanese cartridges. Excuse me 1 second. I'll chuck that back in there, in the box. Don't want to wreck the box, because I'm actually flogging this on eBay at this moment in time. But yeah, so that's the difference between boxes and converters and that. And but what they did is, I want to show you this one as well. This is a Famicom Everdrive N8. You can get the standard NES version. Pretty much you see a nice clear cover on this version. Comes with an SD card in the side, and you can pretty much put every Famicom game on here, which is quite useful, because some Famicom games are getting very expensive. Like some of Carnival Wrecker. I would love to have the original art, but I'm really not willing to pay the 800 to 900 quid that it goes for, which is insane. So yeah, Famicom, you know, I like collecting Famicom cartridges as well, but it's pretty cool to have the option of the Everdrive. These ones are a little bit expensive. They run about the £100 mark with the SD card in the case, but they're well worth it. And the colour scheme goes quite nice with the my original Famicom. That's why I bought that one. So if I move this stuff to the side, and I'll show some other stuff. I say what they did as well, with the original Famicom in 1986, they came up with a Famicom disk system. What that is, basically a disk system sits underneath here. There's slots on top, and then you put this like RAM cartridge in, and you can run the disk system games. on it, but I haven't actually got one of them, so I can't show you one of them, unfortunately. But this system games were like this, and essentially what they were, I say this is Warner, what they were basically like sort of floppy disk. They're a little bit different to a floppy disk. I may have a floppy disk somewhere. Actually, I go on right here to give you an idea. I say that's the our original standard floppy disks, as you would see, and here is the Nintendo Famicom disk system. I say quite similar in size. They're a little bit thinner, but overall, but yeah, very similar idea. Pretty much works on the same sort of technology, magnetic disc. This slots into the disc system, and then you can actually play games off these discs. But what they did in Japan as well, you could actually buy blank versions of these discs, and you could go to a game shop in Japan. They'd have a Nintendo booth, and on that booth there'd be loads of downloadable games. Because there's lots of games that came out in this you could only download, and what you did, you put your disc in, and then it would you pay so much money or whatever, and it would and you would basically copy the game onto your blank disc. What you can do with these as well, you can actually wipe these discs as well and put other games on them, so which a lot of people tended to do. So you got to make sure these ones work. Obviously, a magnetic disc, the best to keep them in good quality. Yeah, so they had lots of games that came out, but they're very hard to get hold of. You can buy bulk loads of discs from Japan, but whether they all work, I don't know. But good thing about the EverDrive is you can actually put all the ROM images for these discs actually on the EverDrive, and it will auto swap sides and it'll play all the games, which is quite nice. But to say, that's the Famicom disk system, as you see by there. And what they did is when the actual disk system came out, which I say it's like a piece that goes underneath, the same year in 1986 they released the Twin Famicom, which is another revision. This was this was actually licensed out to Sharp actually made this, not Nintendo, and this machine actually incorporated the disk system and the cartridge system. And as I'll demonstrate just for the hell of it, you slot the disk system in there, you turn that up like so, and then it cuts the cartridge slot off, and it'll automatically play the disk system games, which is really nice. Loading times are slower on the disk system, obviously, I suppose, and the discs are not as big as what the cartridges could have been. But yeah, the Twin Famicom, this is like another revision of the machine. This one, let's say you've got your standard push down there, which pushes the cartridge out. You've got your on-off button, you've got a reset. You've got your same port by there for using joypads and various other things. It has this port, if I can open it. I have no idea what that is for. It does look very, very similar to the port they use on the actual Super NES, but it doesn't have the notch in it, so I'm not entirely sure what that port does. Round the back, you may notice with this one comes as standard AV converted, so this has got properly done AV. Subsequently, this does have a lot better picture than the original Famicom. The picture quality is a lot better on this one. It's still, it's AV, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's still, the quality of it's a lot better. It has this port, which I still don't quite know what that port actually is. As you can see, there's the leads for the joypad. They're hardwired actually into the back of the machine. If I turn this around, and there's not much lead on them. As you may be able to see, the leads that's pretty much the lead on it, which is very, very short. So same deal with these. The joypads are very similar in shape, so they've still got the same ridges, they still slot in the back, but they changed the design and they got the 1 and the 2, which is pretty cool, and they made them red. What they did as well, they also made various different colours of this machine. They did a red one. I'm sure there's like a different grey one with there's like bluey sort of colours on it. There was the black one. I can't remember exactly how many colours, but they did a few different sort of colours of the actual machine. So pretty much the same as the original Famicom. You got your buttons, you pretty much the same stuff. You got your microphone over there. And that's pretty much the twin Famicom. As I say, it's a different revision. It's a little bit different. It was actually made by Sharp. These ones apparently have got slightly muffled sound, but there is a resistor actually on the board. If you cut the resistor, it'll change the sound back. But say they mono sound the same as the original Famicom. So that was like the second sort of revision of the machine that was made in Japan. And then in 1993, obviously quite 10 years later, basically, they decided to revise the machine again. They made I suppose it's like a cheaper machine really, for different marketplace. So they came out with the AV Famicom, which is this. It looks pretty much almost exactly the same as the American AV Famicom, which came after the NES in America. But the American one, because of the size of the cartridges, it's got like a rounded lip by here, and the cartridge sits down into that lip. They probably did it so the cartridge didn't waggle around. But yeah, that's the AV Famicom. What you may notice this difference is this one's actually got joypad ports like the original NES in this country on the front. And that's because this one actually uses a different joypad. He uses very short lead again, unfortunately, but he uses what's pretty much known as the dog bone controller, which mine's a bit dirty for some reason. The dog bone controller. What you may notice with the difference between this one is, if you look at the actual D-pads themselves, the D-pad's bigger on this. This is pretty much exactly the same D-pad as the original SNES pads, and so this D-pad's actually better because it's bigger. It's only a little bit bigger, but it feels a lot better with our hands. I'd say the Japanese probably got slightly smaller hands, but yeah, it feels a lot better. And it's still got the original 2 buttons and this, but on controller 2, there's no mic anymore. There's pretty much just the same controller for both of them, so they got rid of the mic. The dog bones, I don't think they look as nice as the other controllers, but I think they do feel really nice to use, actually, the dog bones. I quite like them. So yeah, so that goes in there. As you notice at the side, they've still got a port on the side for extra joypads and various other things. Your power button here and your reset switches there. And then, as you notice on the back, power supply, and it's got the multi-out port, just exactly like the SNES. This port is AV. It's not RGB or nothing. This port is AV. You can do various. You can use pretty much the SNES AV cables will work on you. The US one didn't actually have this. It had your standard TV sort of connector, your aerial sort of lead. So the Japanese version actually was, in lots of ways, did have a superior picture out of the box. Yeah, so it's got this. But one thing about these as well is they're smaller, they're lighter. They're not don't tend to be cheaper these days. But you may even notice this by here. This is not on the originals. This is something that I've had done on here. This is a palette switch button. This, what it does, changes the colour of the actual picture you get on the Famicom. So you can have slightly different shades of colours, which is useful because some games don't work properly when they're RGB modded. This one's been RGB modded. That's why this port at the back now is using a SNES, a Super SNES RGB SCART lead. It's been fully RGB modded, so it's been converted from AV to proper RGB, and I have to say the picture is stunning. The RGB board are going to, it's a little pricey. It set me back. I think it was something like 124 quid altogether. But sending it off, putting it back, the guy did the conversion for me. I would normally do it myself, but I didn't have the kit or anything to do it, so I paid the guy to do it for me. He done a very nice job, but the picture is stunning. It makes hell of a difference over the other 2 versions. I say especially over the original Famicom because the picture's not great. The AV one's a lot better, but the RGB that comes out with this now is it's stunning. It's super, all I can say is super clean picture. It's very stunning, perfect, super clean picture. So I say that's the AV Famicom, say slightly different revision, and I think this came out roughly about the same time as the SNES came out, or just after. So let's put that back in. So as you can see, that's pretty much the 3 revisions of the Nintendo Famicom, or the family computer. Famicom's like a shorter name for it. it came out in Japan. I quite like all three versions. This one's obviously a lot bigger compared to these ones. I do think the original one, this one, looks the best. I really like that Fisher-Price toy sort of look. It's just, I don't know, it's just really retro. I don't know, there's something retro about it. Mine's a bit yellow, but it's supposed to be white. But I gotta be honest, in some ways, I think the yellow and the red actually suits it, bizarrely as that is. Like, so I'm not bothered in retro brighten it to make it go white. I think the yellow actually does suit the look of it. This machine is roughly about the same size as the original, but obviously has the different ports. And then you've got the Famicom then with the twin Famicom with the disc system and the joypads built in. So that was pretty much the Nintendo Famicom family in Japan. That was the 3 different revisions they did of the machines. Like I said, there's multiple colours of this one you can get, and there is the disc system that's in here. You can get an add-on for this to put the disc system underneath. It's like a big sort of burgundy sort of box with a slot in it. But yeah, that's the 3 revisions. Gotta say, I was never into the SNES years ago. I had a mass system. I love my mass system, and the SNES wasn't really popular in Britain. I don't know what it was. It was Soldier. I did used to go to Boots and sit there and play Salamander on it, and on the demo machines they had there, or Track and Field or whatever. But it wasn't really popular in Britain, and I don't think Nintendo really marketed it that well in Britain. So for years and years, I never really bothered with it, and it was only, say, I got into emulation and started playing the NES and started to like it a bit, and then I decided to buy the Famicom a few years ago, which I got, and I got it. I've grown a big appreciation for the NES. I think the NES is a pretty fantastic retro console. Even now, I definitely suggest if you're after a good old school retro console, buy yourself a Famicom. There is so many great games on the Famicom. They did everything, shoot 'em ups to arcade games. You know, they may not look as nice and colourful as the mass system, but I wouldn't have said this years ago. I would have said the mass system was better. But I gotta admit, I think the Famicom is much better than the mass system. It's just got so much more games on it, and so much, more better games on it. You know what I mean? This is so much good stuff. There's so many amazing shoot 'em ups and stuff actually on the Famicom, which you don't get on the mass system. And I think I've learned to appreciate the Famicom quite a bit. And it's a very, very good console. So I say, if you're after something retro that you may not have played much of, pick yourself up a Famicom and get an EverDrive. I think you'd be happy for a very, very, very long time. So many good stuff. Like I said, I do come across games every now and then I play, and I just get stuck playing them. And a few offhand is YY World 2. Start playing them, they're brilliant. Kid Dracula is fantastic. I say Summer Carnival Wrecker, but don't buy the original because it's an insane price. So I think you obviously got the Mario games on you. Shatterhand is pretty awesome, and the Salamander games, the Gradius games. They had Salamander and Gradius. If somebody had given me both of those games at the time I had a mass system, and I had one of these, the Salamander and Gradius, I think I would have chucked my mass system out the window. But yeah, that's the Famicom, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a bit long, but yeah, Famicom, really like it, well recommend it. So anyway, guys, I shall catch you in the next video. Bye now.
Well, guys, we're not quite finished yet. I did forget to mention one other thing. Well, 2 other things, actually. It's me noticed there was 2 other Famicoms that came out in Japan. I don't own them, but they're quite interesting anyway. One, as you can see the picture of here, is the Famicom Titler. This was pretty much a Famicom that you could play games on, and then you could do subtitles for games. So it was there for video recording and stuff like that. These came out, I think they were like 43,000 yen. I'm not quite sure how much that is in pounds, but they're a grand or so to pick up now if you actually got one. Interesting thing about them is, it's the only Famicom out there that's got native RGB video. It also got S video on it as well. So people do try to get older because of the RGB video output on them. I say they were an interesting machine. They came out by Sharp. I've never ever seen one. I've only ever seen pictures or videos of them. But yeah, you could do subtitles on them. So I think they were really meant for TV channels and stuff like that, so they could do game videos and put the subtitles and do video editing and stuff on them. So that was the first one that came out, and the second one that came out is the Sharp Nintendo TV, which is pretty much known as the C1 NES TV. That came out in Japan as well. I'm not sure. I couldn't find anything that says the date, but I think it came out in 1989. But from what I can find as well, some people are saying retail in 1983. So I don't know whether this came out at the same time as the original Famicom, but I don't think it did. But anyway, this pretty much was a Famicom built into a TV, which is pretty cool. They had better picture quality than the original Famicom, but they don't do RGB. I've seen videos of them. They're very rare, and I think they do cost a fair amount of money now if you actually want one. But imagine importing that from Japan, that just costs you a fortune. But yeah, they're interesting. They're pretty cool. So yeah, a lot of the screenshots in the Japanese magazines and stuff at the time, they used the Sharp Nintendo television to actually make those screenshots, because the video quality was quite nice on it. I say they also followed it up with a Super Nintendo TV as well, but that's something, I'll come into it later on. But yeah, guys, they were the two things I missed out. So, and that's the last two Famicom models available in Japan. So hope you enjoyed the video, and I shall catch you next time. Okay, bye now.